Hey, everybody. Welcome to the WagerTalk College Football Podcast for the week of November 18th and 19th. College football galore on today's card list, and it may not be the sexiest card when you talk about key and marquee matchups throughout the entire card from top to bottom, but there are point spreads on all these games, which makes it sexy to us. We're going to break down a handful of those games coming up in just a little bit, including the big battle between Michigan and Wisconsin. But as always, we start by going behind the counter with Matt Holt. He is Vice President of Business Development at CGT Sports in Las Vegas. Matt is unable to be with us in studio tonight, but earlier, Dave Cokin and I spoke to Matt on the Las Vegas Sports Line on ESPN Las Vegas. Here's what Matt had to say about this week's college football betting handle.
All right, we got plenty to talk about, including the fight weekend. We're going to try and jam it all into one segment, so let's get rocking and rolling. Begin with the college football betting preview, and well, is there anything happening tonight? There's not a lot of big games, but we'll check out the Wednesday night schedule first. Anything happening on these three games tonight?
Yeah, we did take one big bet, a six-figure bet, $110,000 to win $100,000 on Miami of Ohio, minus 2.5. We're probably headed to 3. You know, where everyone else is 2.505. We're 2.515. Probably headed to 3 on this game because of that one big bet we took. Other than that, the action's pretty much spread out evenly. It's kind of what you would expect from a Maction Wednesday. Fairly good action, but not great action. You know, 3 times as much dollars wagered on Toledo, both on account and over the counter. Toledo obviously trying to cinch their side of the MAC championship game, something that Ohio failed to do last night, losing to Akron. And then we're actually getting a little sharp money on Western Michigan here versus Northern Illinois. This is a line that opened 10 down to 7.5. 4 times more dollars wagered on Western Michigan on account. The over-the-count handle on Northern Illinois' handle, but not anywhere near the sharp money we're taking on Western Michigan in that one. So we're probably going to need Northern Illinois as the favorite there, but we're going to need Eastern Michigan big.
Matt, last night, Eastern Michigan was 3.5 just about everywhere, including CGT, and that's what I jumped on it, plus 3.5. How much of the move was, you know, for you guys, and I know it dropped to 2.5 and, you know, just about everywhere this morning, but how much of the move, you know, what percentage of the bets were coming in on Eastern Michigan at plus 3.5 before that big six-figure bet?
A pretty good percentage. In fact, the only other bet we have on the game over 10K was on Eastern Michigan, and it did come last night. But then this morning we took that six-figure bet on Miami of Ohio, and our whole thinking on the game completely flip-flopped, as it does anytime you take bets that big. So, yeah, prior to that, it was mostly Eastern Michigan money, but that one big bet sometimes on games like this turns it all around.
I'm pretty good at judging where lines are going to go. I have to admit, I'm mystified by what's taking place in the Friday UNLV New Mexico game. The opener was New Mexico 2. It dropped to pick 'em. I thought UNLV might end up going off the favorite here. New Mexico has absolutely nothing to play for, and they are the worst turnover team, I believe, in the nation. But the money's shown on New Mexico, and now it's up to 2.5. What's going on there?
And this is sharp money. Look, over the counter, 2.5 times more dollars wagered over the counter on the spread bets in this game. We did take a couple of 2K UNLV money line bets, but the biggest bets on this game from the sharpest players on account are on the New Mexico Lobos, and that's why this line's creeping back up and probably headed to a field goal by kickoff.
You know, the last 3 games that New Mexico has played, not only have they only hit 45% of their passes, they've got no touchdowns, 6 interceptions thrown. I've never seen a stat like this for an entire 3 games.
The coach is probably going to get fired, too.
Check this out. 2.3 yards per pass attempt.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how bad it is with that New Mexico
passing game. And they lost one of their best
game.
Running backs who's out this weekend. I honestly, I don't often get flummoxed by a line move, but I'm at a loss to explain this one. But look, and I'm not going to dwell on this because we don't want to waste time.
Right.
But I don't like playing on teams where the coach is almost. Look, this internal investigation with Davey might have gone away if they'd have made a bowl game. They're not making a bowl game. They're better than San Jose State. Congratulations. I think he's out.
This comes down to UNLV, whether they can stop the run or not.
Yeah.
ACC action. It's not the sexiest of cards, but Georgia Tech taking on Duke at Duke. The Jackets, 6-point road favorite at last check over the Blue Devils. Duke looking for wins here and at Wake for their 6th win. Georgia Tech needs just one more win to be eligible for a bowl game. But the Blue Devils have dropped 6 in a row. They've gone 0-5-1 against the spread. And the stat of the week, Matt, Duke, minus 600 yards rushing in the last 4 games.
Against the rushing team here.
Yep.
And look, no disagreement between the Sharps and the public here. They're both heavy on Georgia Tech. 100% of the dollars wagered over the counter on Georgia Tech. 94% of the dollars wagered on account on Georgia Tech. We have yet to take a bet on the Duke Blue Devils over the counter thus far this week. I mean, I know it's only Wednesday, but that's never a good sign.
Now, and David Cutcliffe, if he can't get production out of a quarterback, nobody can, and this kid's really struggling for the Blue Devils. Pitt, Virginia Tech is interesting because we're seeing some line movement in this game. Virginia Tech slumping a bit right now, and even though Pittsburgh lost at home last week to North Carolina, it looks like they're catching some support.
Yeah, look, it looks like the line's shifting a little bit here in this game in favor of Pittsburgh, but we're not really seeing it at the betting windows. This is more of a market shift. We're pretty close to even action over the on account, and there's only $150 separating our over the counter action as well. So we're pretty even action. I'm not seeing the amount of one-sided sharp Pittsburgh action that the market is, but there certainly has been a market shift.
You know, Matt, for 4 straight games before beating Virginia Tech and Notre Dame, Miami seemed to be escaping rather than winning games and seemed to be living on borrowed time. Then they beat Virginia Tech 28-10, helped out a little bit there by turnovers, but they absolutely thoroughly crushed the Irish. I'm not sure there were too many college football teams that could have beat Miami last weekend. Listen, I know Virginia's ground game stinks, but it is tough for me right now, Matt, to lay 20 points with Miami coming off of those big games, especially last week.
But that's exactly what the Sharps are doing right now. They are laying that number with the Miami Hurricanes this week, something I didn't think would happen either. Pretty much equal action over the counter, and in fact, while it's a very small differential, only $160 difference between the two over the counter, we've actually taken more dollars on Virginia spread over the counter. But all the big bets, every bet over $1,000, including several over $3,300 on the Miami Hurricanes in this spot. Looks like we're going to need the Cavaliers pretty big.
Well, I can tell you one thing. If it was Tom Osborne versus Joe Paterno in their primes, you wouldn't be seeing a 3-touchdown neighborhood line with Nebraska and Penn State. It isn't. It's Mike Riley against James Franklin. It's a mismatch, and it looks like you can't make the number high enough in this game.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we are taking nothing but Penn State action in this game, and this is one, to your point, look, just with the names on the back, on the front of the uniforms, you would expect this line to be much closer. Sharps having no problem laying this big number thus far. Going to be interesting where this one gets to by kickoff.
Huskers have allowed 44 points per game in their last 9 times as an underdog. 44 points per game. They used to give that up in about 8 games combined when Osborne was there. Michigan at Wisconsin, obviously a huge game with national title implications for Wisconsin. And last check, the Badgers laying 7.5 down from 8. Home game, obviously. Listen, Matt, if Wisconsin wins out, they're in the playoffs, I believe. At the very least, Clemson or Miami won't be there after the ACC title game. But I keep thinking about that one game. They've won one game against basically a step-up game, and that was against the Hawkeyes last week. They were impressive. At the same time, the Hawkeyes were in off of Ohio State. Where's the betting on this one?
Look, maybe the Jim Harbaugh effect is worn off a little bit there down in Ann Arbor, because I thought we'd see a lot more Michigan underdog money, especially at more than a touchdown. But it's actually 1.5 more dollars wagered on Wisconsin over the counter than the Michigan Wolverines. But the Sharps here still taking a shot with Michigan at this inflated number, more than a touchdown. This is a line that was 2.5 before the season started. Now, all of a sudden, what we are seeing is about 2.5 times more dollars wagered on Michigan. I think this one's probably headed to 7. That's probably where the number's going to settle.
This last game we'll talk about before we get to the fights this weekend, this is the first time I've ever heard this as far as this rivalry goes. UCLA USC always has been a very heavy volume game out here for obvious reasons. The proximity to Los Angeles. It's a game it's a great rivalry that draws a ton of action. What I'm hearing, Matt, and I don't know if it's the same with you guys as it is every place else, crickets. Nobody's playing the game. There's no interest in UCLA USC.
Absolutely, and it is absolutely astonishing that is actually the case, but it is. We have yet to take a bet over $1,000 on this game, and we're not writing ticket after ticket either in the $100 to $500 range. Look, we have less than 10K total of handle right now on this game.
Wow.
Obviously, that'll change by Saturday, but this is a game where you expect to do 300 to 700,000 of handle at our place alone. The fact that it's Wednesday afternoon and we only have 10K and haven't had a bet over $1,000 yet Makes me wonder what's going on. Is the line right where it should be, or is there just no interest in this game this year because the Pac-12 is so down?
Yeah, I took the Bruins last week against Arizona State. They got the win. They got the cover 44-37. They were at home, and that's the key word. They were at home. They're 5-0 in Pasadena. They're 0-5 on the road. They've given up at least 44 points per game in every one of those road games this year. And I like to tell people when it comes to UCLA, USC, if you think this is a close rivalry, think again. The closest margin of victory the last 4 meetings, 18 points. This is not always a close, hard-fought game.
I'm telling you, I'm still sticking with this. I really think Lane Kiffin's the perfect hire for UCLA.
Yeah.
I absolutely love him out there. We'll see what happens. They won't do it, but they've never relied on me on these search committees, and sometimes I think.
How about Tennessee?
Sometimes I think they ought to.
Send it back to Tennessee.
They won when he was there.
Absolutely.
Let's talk some fights. We've got 2 cards this weekend. Where do you want to begin, Matt?
Well, we could start with the Bellator card. This card, unfortunately, not a whole lot to talk about here. The main event, Pitbull Fieri, got canceled due to an injury, and now we're left with an extremely subpar card taking place in Tel Aviv, Israel. The favorite, Noad Lahad, in the main event, minus 450. The one fight I was looking at here is John Salter over Radcliffe. Salter, this is a real mismatch. Should be really a squash match for him. But at a minus 650 price, that's already built into the line. Besides that, there's not really a lot to talk about. The one fight that I do find interesting is a Ukrainian kid, only 24 years old, Fejtovic. He's about a minus 130 to minus 145 favorite on the opening card on that Bellator card. And he's fighting a local fighter named Hayam Ghazali, who's 44 years old. And it took me searching through about 25 websites to even be able to confirm this guy's age. But he's going to turn 44 years old. It just really feels like a fight to me where the younger, stronger guy probably gets the win here. I know that it's an Israeli fighter fighting in Israel, so it's obvious why this guy's on the card. But a 24-year-old against a 44-year-old, I'm going to go ahead and lay the 135 with the 24-year-old.
Fight Night 121 in Sydney. Biggest movement on the card yet from a betting perspective. Who is that? And do you expect any particular fight to get one-sided money over the next few days?
I think we're probably going to see one-sided money on Fabricio Verdum, just for name value alone. Former UFC heavyweight champion of the world. Fought here recently a couple of months ago. Got a first-round armbar submission win, so people probably think he's back. The problem is he is 40. I actually think we're going to get a lot of public money, and we've gotten some already on Verdum, but I think we will get some sharp money on Tybura, who's actually has a pretty good wrestling game and might be able to keep this one standing. Other than that, a fight that I'm looking at, Tim Means against Belal Muhammad. Belal Muhammad blew into the UFC undefeated, talked a lot, power puncher, but he's only 1-2 in his last 3 fights in the UFC. And a guy who I think is ripe for the picking for a guy like Tim Means, who is an absolute destroyer and finisher out there. That's one I'm probably going to look to back. Other than that, a lot of these fights I thought, they're local guys, right? They tried to utilize a lot of local Australian talent, and I get that. And I'll be probably digging later in the week to find a couple of hidden gems. One that I do have on this card, though, it's on the prelims, Anthony Freight Train Hamilton versus Adam Wieczorek. This is a fight that we actually used on the podcast about a month ago as the top play is the under in this fight. The problem was it got canceled on that card because of some visa issues. Now they moved it to this card. Look, no difference from a month ago to now. These two fighters, Anthony Freight Train Hamilton, knocked out in his last 3 appearances, all in the first round. In fact, his last 6 fights haven't made it out of the first round. Don't expect this one to either. I'm laying the 1.5 rounds under, laying the $1.40.
It is an exceptionally packed weekend. College football, college basketball, NFL, college football, pro hockey, NBA, the 2 fight cards, the golf tournament. I guess there's probably some soccer going on. I mean, there's no way, unless you're going to sit in the book all day, there's no way you can bet this stuff in person. You don't have to anymore.
Yeah, that's right, and this is an absolutely packed weekend. And for the 4th straight year in a row, November college basketball handle is up year to date, and they just keep putting on great games. We just saw the great games last night, Michigan State, Duke, Kansas, Kentucky, a great finish there. And it's really resonated in college basketball overall. The NBA is getting a lot of popularity out of the gate with Boston playing so well despite the injury. You're right, look, There's so much going on. You don't want to wait in line. You don't want to have to keep going back to the book, and you don't want to have to make all your bets at once. Go wherever you want. Watch the games wherever you want. Take the 5 minutes. Download the app. Bet the games where you watch the games from the convenience of your mobile telephone. That's how people bet in 2017.
Appreciate it, Matt. Great information as always. We will talk to you very soon.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure. Have a great week. Best of luck. Take care.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk College Football Podcast. Don't forget to check out our NFL podcast, also here at WagerTalk.com. Let's break down a few games, fellas. We got Kentucky taking on Georgia in the SEC, and last week we said we needed to see how Jacob Fromm could handle the situation if he was forced to make key decisions and in the passing game as well. It didn't go so well when Auburn slowed the run. Fromm wasn't ready for prime time. Marco, Georgia laying 21.5 at this one. Kentucky has nice numbers against the run, but it might be because you can pass all day on the secondary. Do you expect a Georgia letdown? Has it entered your handicapping thoughts, or are they in bounce-back mode for you?
Well, this is a spot for Georgia, unlike, when we talk about, we make fun of it, but the Dream Crusher scenario is not in play here because Georgia knows that if they run the table, they are in the SEC championship game anyways. They're going to face either Auburn or Alabama, depending on who wins that matchup. And if they beat, I don't care who they beat, but especially if they would beat Alabama in the SEC championship game, you're in. They can't leave the SEC champion out. There's no way. So they still have all their goals in front of them. What they need to do in these final two games is they got to work on the quarterback, and they can't rely on just running the football. I think they need to pass the football in these two games to get this guy the confidence he needs, because you're not going to beat an Alabama or an Auburn. We saw that on Saturday, one-dimensional. You're going to have to throw the football. So they need to get here, and that's the only thing that would get me considering laying the big number here.
Kentucky kind of poked fun at them all season for being kind of a fraud at 6-2. And then they did lose at home, and they're not that good. They've been outstatted on a regular basis. But, now they're a 7-win team. And they did play their best game of the week, best game of the year last week. Granted, it was against a Vanderbilt team that is really bad. I mean, Vanderbilt, they're horrible. But nevertheless, they went on the road, and they were very impressive for 60 minutes in a very easy win against the Commodores. To me, they're kind of a dangerous team to be laying 3 touchdowns to right now because they're playing with a lot of confidence. They want to keep winning, obviously. You've got positive momentum. Why not get to 8 wins? Every time they win a game, it's a bigger bowl for them, something more exciting to shoot for. So that keeps me out of the game, basically, because what you said is accurate. I mean, Kentucky they're just not particularly good, and Georgia is not out of this thing yet. And the Bulldogs are a real good football team that had a very bad game last week. That's all it was a very bad game. If push comes to shove, I think I'd probably take the points and hope for the best, but there's better options out there for me.
As far as motivation goes, add there, you said, each game they win, they get a better bowl. Each game they win from 6 on, head coach Stoops has it in his contract. He gets a $250,000 bonus. So, he's game planning to get some wins.
Depends on how much the players like Stoops for them to get that bonus.
I think they like him plenty this year because they're having fun and they're winning games.
If he owed me money, I'd play a good game of quarterback. I'll tell you this much, though. There's something that I like to use that a lot of guys not a lot of guys, there's a couple of guys I know that like to use this also, and it has to do with your season kind of having that bubble popped, and it's after a 5-0 start. Georgia, obviously, more than 5 games into the season, they get their bubble popped, kind of, except the fact that what Marco mentioned, they can still get there as long as they can get to the SEC title game. So it kind of gets thrown by the wayside. And just a lean here on Georgia, but it won't be a bet for me. Virginia at Miami. Speaking of emotions, where might Miami be for this one, Dave, off the crushing of Notre Dame and the win the previous week over Virginia Tech? Because those wins really followed, several close games, 4 or 5 close games in a row, in which it looked like they were basically living on borrowed time. They beat Virginia Tech by 18, and I'm telling you what, that might have been the best performance of the college football season by any college football team, what they did to Notre Dame, both speed-wise and their physical play as well in the win over the Irish.
That was a brilliant performance. And I'm not one who tries to guess at letdowns. Now, I think you're clearly paying a serious premium in the betting line if you want to bet the Canes here. Mm-hmm. And that would probably rule them off my card because I think that the odds makers have put this number at a place where it's, a couple points higher. It's not wildly higher, but a couple points higher than I would have made it. But I do not want to go against this team right now. I don't think they're going to take anything for granted. I mean, yes, they're in the top 4 right now, and they're not getting moved out of there as long as they win out. But to me, it's easier to sell a team on staying ready than selling a team that just lost a big game. In other words, I think even though Georgia's still very much alive in the playoff picture, I think it's a tougher sell for Kirby Smart than it is for Mark Richt. Mark Richt probably walked in there Monday or Tuesday morning when I was like, all right, here we go. Let's keep it rolling. And why not? We want to be number 1. They want to play. Why not? They want to be number 1. So I think there's still plenty of motivation for Miami, and I wouldn't go against them here. If I were to play the game, even though the points are a little too high for me to actually play, I would take Miami.
Marco went from 19.5 at CGT to 20, back down to 19.5 as we speak.
Yeah, do you want me to talk about this one now or save it for my best bet?
I guess if it's your best bet, we'll wait for your best bet. How about that? To the Big Ten. Game with national title implications for one team, that being the Wisconsin Badgers. And Smart Alec, we're going to start with you here. Michigan on the road against the Badgers. Wisconsin, they were a 2.5-point favorite in this matchup before the season began. They are now a 7.5-point favorite in Madison. And, Marco, if Wisconsin wins out, they're in the playoffs. At the very least, Clemson or Miami won't be there after the ACC title game. So, Dave and I know from doing the show with Dave every day of the week that we both agree. Wisconsin's undefeated. They're in the playoffs. It's as simple as that. But can they cover, not only win this game, but cover that big 7.5-point spread?
Yeah, well, you're looking at a line here that was the same as what Michigan was getting going into Penn State. The difference is Wisconsin doesn't have the offensive weapons that Penn State has. Mm-hmm. And you're looking at two teams that both play great defense against the run. So if both teams play great defense against the run, this is going to have the quarterbacks make some plays. And I really, pick your poison here. I think, I'd give the slight edge, obviously, to the Wisconsin quarterback because the Michigan quarterback's just been absolutely putrid, this year so far. But you're talking about a defense that has only allowed one opponent to top 20 points this year, outside of that Penn State game. And remember, Penn State, whenever they, took Michigan behind the woodshed, that was a colossal, mammoth revenge game for them because they got killed by Michigan last year, and it was that loss that really was the one that kept them out of the playoff championship. When the committee said, even though they won the Big Ten championship and beat Ohio State, and Ohio State got put in, they just said, the Michigan loss was too bad. It was. So they had something to play for there. I think you're looking at a total of 39.5. That's about as low as you're going to ever see on a college football game, modern day football. So they're telling you points are coming at a premium. I got to take, if I can get over a touchdown, I got to
slobber knocker.
Yeah, it's a
slobber knocker this
week
between these two. Dave, you've got a quarterback from Michigan who has to make a rare start now, and he's making it on the road at Madison. Camp Randall, not the easiest place to play. And Hornibrook, if you look at his last several games, 9 touchdowns, 11 picks.
Yeah, he's not a superstar. I don't think. Well, I guess the Browns are probably looking at him as the number one overall draft pick. They had a massive chip on their shoulder last week. So in addition to it being an important game, I think they had the disrespect angle working for them in a big way. Hey, we're unbeaten and we're number 8. What the blank is that all about? And I think it really worked for Wisconsin. They went out there and they laid one on Iowa. But what you said, Scott, is accurate. Now it's a different situation because now the whole task for Wisconsin, I guess maybe they can still look at it and say, well, we're still only number 5. Why aren't we higher than that? But they know now that if they stay perfect the rest of the way, they're going to be in the playoff. So now the pressure, I don't think there was any pressure on Wisconsin last week, and I think now there is pressure on them. And the problem is I don't like situations like this with untested, if that's the right word, quarterbacks on the road. in a really difficult atmosphere. So, to me, I think there's a good possibility that points will be at a premium in this football game, and I would look at the under first.
One thing that Dave said that I agree with 100% about the chip on the shoulder, and now they know they just have to win. And this is something we're going to use when we talk about these games over the next couple weeks. That puts Wisconsin into a position where coaches make a mistake, in my opinion, where instead of playing to win, you start playing not to lose.
Exactly.
And that, when you're laying over a touchdown, I don't want to be having a coach thinking and making decisions where
we don't know that this coach is going to do this, though.
We don't.
It's just in general.
But on the flip side, Harbaugh has nothing to lose.
No.
Right.
He can take chances on 4th and shorts and gamble instead of doing the right, instead of punting or whatever.
Sure.
He can take the chances where Chris might not. And
here's
what
the
I've seen
thing.
of Chris's nature, and remember, he was at Pitt.
Right. Yep.
He's not a guy that takes a lot of chances.
No, most coaches aren't.
Right.
Most coaches, we can't predict exactly what Chris' mindset is going to be going into this game. But by and large, what you said becomes the rule of thumb where coaches start coaching not to lose. We see it in games all the time where it's the fourth quarter, they're up by 13, and they're coaching not to lose. And I've never agreed with that principle because there's nothing illegal about going out there and turning 13 into a 20 or turning 27 into 35. Doesn't matter. Just keep playing your game. Whatever's working, stick with it. Whatever's working for Wisconsin makes it more difficult because they're not a wide-open football team by any means, so their nature is to be conservative. That, to me, indicates that they'll stay conservative here.
I think what they got to do is stick to their nature. And I'll talk about this a little bit later with my best bet. But it's a situation where I think they've got to stick to their nature. I don't think you can come out, oh, we're going to run double reverses because we're going to go after this.
Of course not.
You got to stick to your nature. And their nature is run first, pass when you have to.
It works. By the way, it works.
Yeah. UCLA at USC, guys. Well, it's kind of funny that the betting action in USC-UCLA, it ain't what it used to be thus far in Las Vegas. There's not a whole lot of action on this game. The Trojans opened 16. They're now 16.5. Had UCLA at home last week, and they won and covered over ASU. But the key word, they were home. They're undefeated at home this year, 5-0. 0-5 on the road, the Bruins, where they've allowed at least 44 points in every game. And, Dave, it's a big number. USC is healthier than they've been for most of the season. Your thoughts on this one?
Boy, what a game that was last week, by the way, with Arizona State. Both teams were horrendous defensively, even though there was some defensive scores in the game. But, wow. And you can't be that. Look, they've got to find a way to get some pressure on the USC quarterback because that's when he screws up and makes mistakes. But if you give him time to throw, he'll tear you apart. And so will Rosen. So this looks like, and there are a couple of Pac-12 teams that don't fit this profile, but for the most part, it's a league-wide profile, which is all offense, no defense, go, go, go for 60 minutes. I think this is going to be a Rosen versus Donald, just an old-fashioned shootout. And I think you're going to see a ton of points. UCLA can't stop anybody, but it's a semi-road game because, let's face it, the game's still in L.A., so they didn't actually have to go anyplace. They're driving over to this game. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up in the 50 to 30 range, somewhere like that. USC should win the game easily, but it's a ton of points. But
this series hasn't been close, though. It's not like your typical rivalry. It's like the last four meetings, I think the closest margin was 18 points.
No, and that's the thing. USC won't stop scoring if they have the chance to. If they have a chance to beat them by 50, they will.
Sure.
So that makes a case for the favorite. But to me, you're going to get to 80 in this game. I'd be really surprised if there's less points than that scored. It's going to be insane, and I would have to go over.
Mm-hmm. I can't disagree with you. And, when you see a number in the 70s, old school, we would balk at that. You just couldn't do that. But that's not college football today. And, my God, this UCLA defense, this is a team that they give up 300 yards a game on the ground.
Yeah, which Todd Graham apparently forgot last week in the second half because he completely gave up on the run. What are you doing?
Todd Graham.
The team had, I think, 230 yards or something like that on the ground at the half, and he starts throwing the ball all over the place in the second half. Brilliant.
But against a USC team like this that can run the football, so even a bad rushing team is going to be able to have success against UCLA. But now you've got a team that it does run the football good, but has an elite quarterback. they're going to just rip this team up. And you talked about not being competitive. The last 10, this used to be a great rivalry. Yeah. I used to love, when I was a kid I used to love watching USC and, UCLA. That's why last year I got to go to the Rose Bowl because I always wanted to go to the Rose Bowl once. And when I had a chance last year to see, Penn State and USC, that was, a thrill for me.
You got the game of the year as far as
I've been lucky. I've been to 2 bowl games. The only other bowl game I was at was Oklahoma State, Stanford with Whedon and Andrew Luck.
What about the local bowl?
Yeah, no.
I haven't gone there yet.
Really?
I have not. I gotta go.
The stadium can't be helped.
Right.
But one thing, they've actually done a great job over the years of making that a terrific
Las Vegas
bowl
Committee, and I'm not just saying it because I live here in town. You're absolutely right. They do a fantastic job the week leading up to the bowl game, ticket sales, everything about it. And they've been also rewarded with some great games over the years. Not every game is great, but some exciting games.
This will be a major bowl when they move to the new stadium.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, a real
be
major
a destination
bowl.
stop. Yeah.
And then Marco might be good enough for him to
Okay, I will go to one of the Sam Bowl.
It's worth it. It's actually
Sam Boyd Stadium. It's not even worth saying, right? But it's it's bad. It's out there. But
did you give us a play on UCLA?
Well, this is one where USC has dominated this. The average margin of victory the last 10 years in this game, 21.3 points. Yeah. So I don't have normally you say you throw out the stats when it's rivalries. You can't throw the stats out here because UCLA is so bad that this offense, and if you look at what Southern Cal's done, the offense has really woken up the last 3-4 games. They're getting healthy. They're scoring points. I don't want to step in front of them. I would go USC, and I would split the bet and go with the over as well because I see both teams scoring points.
50-30. I don't know if I can go. Maybe 51-31. Anyway, I guess we're all kind of on USC, and we think there'll be a couple of points scored in that one. I'll tell you the game that used to be great. Used to go to it every single year was the Holiday Bowl in San Diego. Not only get to spend a few days in San Diego by the beach as we did,
the games.
But those games were incredible, and we probably went to 6 in a row.
SMU BYU game.
That was before.
Might be the most fun college football game I've ever seen in my life.
84 or something like that?
It's a long time ago, but it was incredible.
Anything in San Diego as well.
Well, that's true. It could have been 51-31, and it still would have been. I mean, they just put on some great games and talk about knowing what to do when it comes to setting up a bowl game. All right, guys, let's take a quick timeout. When we come back, Marco has a sandwich game of the week in college football and then best bets. Stick around.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to Wager Talk College Football Podcast. Scott Spreitzer, Marco D'Angelo, Dave Cokin in studio, Mark Seidel at the controls. We haven't done this for a couple of weeks, Marco. We've been talking a lot of UFC with Matt Holt over the last few weeks, but we go back to Marco's Deli for the sandwich game of the week, and I understand you're heading down to the Southeastern Conference, and boy, I do like the setup. We just need that home team to come through now.
You know what sandwich we got? We're having a pulled pork sandwich.
Makes sense. With a little egg on the other side of it because the Egg Bowl's next week, buddy.
We've got Arkansas here, and I'll tell you what a situation for Arkansas to catch Mississippi State off of the game of the year for them. They played Alabama. They were beating Alabama all the way to the final minute of the game, and then to lose like that. If you're Mississippi State, how do you get yourself back up? You're already bowl eligible. You got 7 wins. You're not doing anything in the SEC. How do you come back and play this week on the road with just for the? I mean, just that's enough.
That's I could stop right sandwich. There. Are we going to close it?
Yeah, I could stop right there and be on Arkansas. But go to the second half of this. They've got their rivalry game against Ole Miss, as you said, in the Egg Bowl. And hopefully I don't get egg on my face with this one, but I got to take Arkansas plus the points. Live home dog here. I'm taking Arkansas.
Yeah, and considering Brett Bielema's involved, it's aptly named the Sandwich of the Week. It should be the entire left side of the menu.
Well, I like the pulled pork with the Razorbacks.
And by the way, it's a huge game for Arkansas. I mean,
they're still bowl eligible if they win their last 2 games.
This is
and they're
a really
both at home,
big game for them. Yeah. And I think Bielema, I don't think Bielema's on the full-fledged hot seat yet because of the way his contract's set up, and I understand he's pretty tight with the AD down there. But
didn't they just fire? They just fired the AD.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, a couple days ago. So
yes, that was just So that
doesn't bode well for him. That doesn't bode
that.
well for him.
So he really does need to make a bowl, and even if he did, whatever the case is, he would go into hot seat next year on the hot seat anyway. So this would behoove the Hogs to win this. And look, they've got the quarterback back on the field. He's no great shakes, but at least he's healthy again, and he's better than what they had.
Someone in Lincoln, and I think it might have been a writer for one of the local newspapers, suggested Bielema for Nebraska. He's been banned from ever stepping across state line into Nebraska again. We do not want Bielema. You think somebody's thinking twice about that decision to go from Madison to Arkansas? I mean, he wasn't actually doing that badly, but he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way at Wisconsin. That was one of the big problems there.
Well, right now, if he rubs anybody, at this point, they're going to get knocked over because that's a big dude. I mean, he is getting bigger by the week, too.
Glad you went that direction with that. So
I'm very careful about what I say in 2018.
Yeah, you have to be. All right, guys. So Arkansas is Marco's sandwich game of the week. They're at home over Mississippi State. When we come back, best bets in college football. Stick around. Welcome back to WagerTalk College Football Podcast, and we've got best bets in just a second. Don't forget to check out our NFL podcast also at WagerTalk.com. We've got 4 games we break down in the NFL along with the NFL best bets. Let's go around the horn, starting first with Dave Cokin over at third base. He is found on Twitter at Dave Cokin and his work at WagerTalk.com. Tell us what's going on at WagerTalk this weekend and your best bet.
I actually haven't put up much yet for the weekend. And part of the reason is we're now into that time frame, and I would recommend this to everybody. Start checking the weather reports because you've got this weekend. In fact, you've got a lot of games, and I'm talking about 20 games where we're going to have winds in excess of in double digits, double-digit wind, which is that's more important than cold or rain or any of the other elements. Wind is the big one because it really has an impact on how game plans are formed and execution of game plans. I'll give you an example. It's Fresno State and Wyoming. Now, to me, the cold is not that, I don't think that's that big a deal. At this time of year, this has generally been an advantage for the Wyomings and the Colorado States to be at home because they're able to grind things out in the cold weather. But it's not here because it's going to be really windy in Laramie. And Wyoming's a team that needs to rely more on the pass than the run this year. At least that's the way they've been game planning all season. They don't run the football especially well. Fresno State, on the other hand, can get a little bit silly when they start throwing the ball all over the place. The quarterback, he's erratic. Sometimes he's really good, sometimes he's not. I think you're going to see Fresno State come in here and say, you know what, we're going to run the football. We're better at that anyway. So I think this situation, despite the altitude and the temperatures, which might not be Fresno-friendly, I think the wind conditions are going to help them with their game plan. Fresno State's better than Wyoming. We know the situation with Wyoming. Quarterback isn't exactly rosy right now. He's had a horrible year anyway. Wyoming has played better lately. I think Craig Bowles done a nice job there straightening things out after a disappointing start. But I think the number and the way it's moved is correct here. No more bargain. Fresno State +1 is see you later. It's now -2.5. But to me, at less than -3, Fresno State, the right side in this game.
Marco D'Angelo, find him on Twitter at Marco in Vegas, one of the co-founders at WagerTalk.com. What's going on at WagerTalk this weekend and your best bet, sir?
Well, check out the videos we did. You guys were in. We did a bunch of videos. Preston was in and Ralph Michaels. So check that out at WagerTalk. And I don't have my weekend card up yet. We're doing this on Thursday. So obviously I had a big play on Thursday night, but I have a couple plays we're looking at, but I want some updated injury reports, especially in the NFL. You get later in the season, like Dave says, weather's a big issue in college football. You get later in the year in the NFL, the injuries start to take their toll. And we've seen these injuries to the offensive lines, what they've meant. Just ask the Dallas Cowboys last week with their left tackle. That I think that was the biggest thing, more so than Zeke Elliott not being there in that game. Yeah,
also going out. Yeah.
So, but for me, I'm going to go with my best bet, guys. You guys broke the game down a little bit already, Virginia and Miami. And although I respect everything that Dave has said, and I'll give a disclaimer. I stepped in front of Miami last week, and they ran me over. But I just don't see how this team now can come out with the same intensity. They had back-to-back, they're not just big games. They were statement games because everybody was telling them, yeah, you're undefeated, but you haven't beaten anybody. Then they beat Virginia Tech. And after the Virginia Tech game, after we looked at it a little bit more, we said, okay, Virginia Tech really
turned the ball over.
Yeah, what did Virginia Tech do this year? The one good team they played, they lost by 14, and it was a 14-point loss that wasn't even as close as the 14. So in comes Notre Dame, but they absolutely smacked the Irish in every facet of that ball game. So now you go from 2 statement games in a row, both of them on Saturday night national TV. And the reason I'm emphasizing Saturday night, we're going from 8 o'clock. You had ESPN on campus last week, game day, everybody down there, big situation. Now you're going to a 12 noon start. The crowd is not going to be as jacked up for the game as well.
22,000 of them. They don't get any support. Is that amazing?
Yeah.
They just get no support. Go
Miami.
ahead.
What do you want? I mean, no offense to Miami.
A couple other things to do.
Sorry, show up at some events, and I'll change my mind. All I know is I watch the Florida Panthers, and if they're not winning every game, there's nobody there. Yeah. The Miami Marlins, forget about it. Maybe they'll do better with Jeter now, but even the Dolphins.
Yeah,
I've had lots of good seats empty when they're not playing well. So same thing with the Canes.
So it's just the thing. You're not going to have everybody drinking at noon. When it's a night game, everybody's tailgating. It's a party city to begin with. All of that combined, I just think now you're paying a premium for Miami. This Virginia team, they've been up and down all year. They are well coached. I like Bronco Mendenhall. I think he has them prepared. And once again, I keep bringing it up, but Miami keeps getting the turnovers. This is now 4 straight games that they've produced 4 turnovers in a game. Can that continue? Well, I didn't think it would continue last week, and it did. But if Virginia holds on to the football, I think they can stay within this big number. Does Miami lose? No. But I don't see them in a blowout situation. And remember, just prior to those last 2 big statement games, Miami had a bunch of close games, and I see that kind of thing happening again here.
That's why I went against them with Virginia Tech a couple of weeks ago, because I saw all those games that went right to the wire for Miami, and it looked to me like they were kind of living on borrowed time. They jumped out early on Vodtech. Vodtech pulled it within 14-10. The reason I didn't play Notre Dame, which if you would have said you had to play the game, I would have been on the Irish last week.
So would I.
The reason I didn't is because when it was 14-10, I saw Miami kicking into another gear that said, okay, we've just blown the lead. And then they separated themselves again, even with a little help from Vodtech and the turnovers. But Miami was there to help force
take advantage
those
of
turnovers and took advantage. So that's what kept me off. Otherwise, I would have been on the Irish if not for that.
What's amazing is that, and nobody's really talking about this, is the best player on the team got hurt and he's out for the year.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we don't care.
Yeah.
Rick's doing right now he's going to be the national coach of the year.
Yeah,
I think he has to be.
All right, guys, I'm at Scott Wins on Twitter, also at WagerTalk.com. We started the week with a college football winner on Eastern Michigan. That was on Wednesday. That takes us to 40-21, 66% on the season in college football. And I've got to play it for Friday, and I've got to play it for Saturday. 2 plays so far, a couple of games that I like quite a bit, and those are available. We'll have more. We'll probably have 5 or 6 by the time we're done early Friday morning posting plays and one final night to really handicap the games. My best bet, by the way, is going to go back to that Michigan-Wisconsin game. I already said, I think it's going to be a real slobber knocker. You got a couple of offenses that I think are going to be held in check by 2 very good defenses. I don't see a lot of long-distance passing in this game. I will say that Wisconsin kicks 7 field goals. Michigan kicks 6. Wisconsin wins by 3. I'll take Michigan plus the points as my radio best bet. All right, that'll be it for the college football podcast for this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks, by the way. We're going to take next week off for Thanksgiving. For Matt Holt, who couldn't make it in today, for Mark Seidel at the controls, for Dave Cokin, and for Marco D'Angelo, I'm Scott Spreitzer. Have a terrific Thanksgiving weekend. Put them in the win column. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night. I'll catch you on the flip side.